This channel is supported by Truefire.
Well, what is this all about then? It's the Truefire Summer Music Festival. What I'm going to tell you about, you can get 1 month of All Access for just $1. The All Access, you can dip in and out of every single course on Truefire, so that's a really great way to get some awesome courses down you.
Okay, so we've got the Artist 8053, a £259 guitar, and we've got a Fender Custom Shop 57 Telecaster, which is like, you know, over 10 times the price, maybe closer to 15 times. So I wanted to do a video kind of shooting these out and see if the artist can actually compete. And we'll get into some details and let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is obviously a little bit of a daft video in some ways, but in other ways I kind of surmised that to obviously beat the Artist Tele, you might need to spend something like 10 times the amount, and then you end up with a guitar that kind of maybe blows it out of the water. So let's see if that is the case here. So, I think when it comes down to tone, the thing that I noticed most of all was that this neck pickup was very kind of high output and muddy compared to the Fender. Now let me know if you preferred that or whatever, but that was not optimal for me. Just an extra bit of relic in there. I did also notice that basically in both neck and bridge pickup positions, seemed to me like this had less twang to it, and you know, a bit of a less stereotypical Tele sound. love to see artists try and take on this slightly more vintage spec vibe, because I think they might actually be able to do something quite reasonable here. So this is a 9.5 inch radius. I was just chatting to Andy Wood the other day. I prefer that to a flatter feeding radius. That's my one thing about the artist. Aside from the finish, I feel like the pickups in it, the radius of it is a little bit on the flat side for me, 14 inches. So I'd like to see them move towards some more vintagey specs. And this is a nice kind of more chunky neck. They say soft V, but it's quite a soft V, not anything like the Nacho V. So, you know, that's not going to put anyone off. It's kind of middle of the road. I think that's what I would say about some of the Fender neck shapes. They tend to, especially on custom shops, they seem to be a little bit thicker, but actual shape of them, they're not too aggressive with it. Interestingly, both these bridge pickups have something similar going on, where the D and G pole pieces are actually higher. I had someone comment on Patreon and just ask if that looked like an error in artists' pickup manufacturer. It's like it on all of them, and if it's like it on the Fender Custom Shop, then I'm going to assume that that's correct. Now, in terms of wood selection, both of these actually have quartz sawn maple. Now what that means is that the grain kind of goes along this way, along the neck. Supposedly there's going to be a bit more stability there. Whether or not that's actually the case, does anyone really know? There's a truss rod in there. Obviously this is rosewood and this is maple, and then this body is polonium, something. But essentially a relatively fast growing species of wood. They call it the tree of life over there where they're made. But in any case, it's a non-standard sort of wood selection for the body, whereas this is obviously a two-piece ash. One of the downsides in some cases with two-piece ash, and you see this across like a bunch of Fender Custom Shop stuff, or all Fender stuff, is that it can be kind of fairly heavy these days. This one is not. This is sub £7, so that was why that was really attractive to me. But in any case, I think the most obvious thing for me is that the relics on these look like very different beasts. Now, it's not to say that the Fender is perfect, because I think there are some issues with that as well. But to artists, there's no relicking on the neck. And then there's the most aggressive relicking, you know, ever on the body. But it's also a little bit strange because there's an undercoat underneath this nitro. So I think it's all nitro. I think it's a different sort of nitro to maybe what we're used to seeing. There's not really any checking as yet. So I would say this looks like a pretty raw kind of, not the best relic job. If I was, you know, having seen one, I might say, you know, you might be better off getting the non-relic version and seeing how that starts to age, because it's just a little bit over the top, I think. Whereas the Fender, and of course these are, I think, a bit more variable because they're more done by hand. It's kind of subtle. It's got nice checking all over, so it does have a slightly more convincing look to it. The neck, as Fender tend to do on their custom shops, is not terribly realistic. So it's like you have finish here, then they just scrub it all off, and then finish here. It does feel very comfortable, but in some ways I don't think that's the most realistic thing ever. The body is quite nice. The only thing is that there's like some fairly, I would say it's a little bit too uniform. I'll do another video on this, but essentially you can see that more or less the same tool has been used here. They've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 across the top, and then like on the back you can just see from the marks that it is the same tool. That's the one area that I'd give it some sort of marks down. But I think what I would say is fretwork is very nice on both. I'll try and give you some close-ups of that. And this has stainless steel frets and locking tuners. Obviously the Fender more vintage sort of narrow tool fret. So yeah, I don't know. You've also got the roasted quarter sawn maple neck. Oh, and a compensated bridge there. So there is a definite sort of difference in the feel of playing these guitars, and also I think in the tone. I don't know how you guys feel about that. They're similar sorts of weights. Maybe the Artist is even lighter actually. Again, I think the Relics, there's a huge gulf between them. I really like the way that the Fender looks and feels to play. I really like the aging on the fretboard. I think that's pretty classily done. Whereas the Artist is, you know, my first Relic. But in any case, I feel like the Artist does stand up pretty well, considering, you know, this is a very sort of expensive instrument. I don't know how you guys feel about what that comes across like in the playing or anything like that. I think my conclusion is really that I'd love to see artists tackling slightly more vintage specs, because I think they could get things even closer. I'd like to see maybe an Artist guitar could be a candidate for a pickup upgrade. I know these are, you know, handmade pickups somewhere in China. But in any case, I think from this video, my conclusion is that these pickups have a more twang, more vintage kind of sound. But in any case, not too shabby. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, which you preferred. Again, let's bear in mind the price gulf. I guess the hardware on here, I'd say, is much nicer matched. These pots and this three-way don't look the most attractive, but again, they're functional. Stark difference in appearance, you know, when you see like a tastefully aged nitro finish versus this, which I think, as I say, this is not the most traditional looking nitro. So it may be nitro, but it may be a different sort of nitro than we really mean, I guess.